Washington, D.C., August 15th, 1945, 8:15 a.m. Church bells ring across the Capitol. Radios play victory speeches. Families gather outside the White House, holding flags and newspapers reading "Peace." The war, the most destructive in human history, is finally over. At least, that's what the world believes. Soldiers come home, factories shift back to civilian life, and nations breathe again after 6 years of blood and fire. But behind government walls, in secured offices where sunlight barely touches desks covered in sealed folders, a different atmosphere fills the air. There is no celebration here, no cheering. Only the quiet hum of typewriters, the rustle of classified papers, and the low voices of men who know something the public does not. The guns may be silent, but a new conflict has already begun. Inside one closed room in the War Department, officers stand around a polished table. They are not planning victory parades. They are sorting through captured documents from Berlin, Tokyo, and Manchuria, blueprints, research reports, interrogation transcripts, and lists of names. Names of scientists, engineers, intelligence operatives, and doctors who served defeated regimes. The briefing is short, direct, and unsettling. Gentlemen, we have entered an intelligence war. The enemy uniforms are gone, but their knowledge remains. Knowledge about rockets that touch the edge of space, chemicals deadlier than bullets, diseases turned into weapons, espionage networks spanning continents, and psychological strategies capable of shaping entire populations. The United States and the Soviet Union fought side by side weeks ago. Now, analysts underline Soviet names on lists and move American assets to monitor ports, train stations, and newly formed embassies. Yesterday's allies are tomorrow's rivals. Outside this room, the nation imagines a future of peace and progress. Inside, officers debate which intelligence to hide, which discoveries to use, and which enemy specialists should quietly disappear from history instead of appearing in courtrooms. They know the public expects justice, not negotiation, but they also know something else. Power never wastes opportunity. There are files open on the table with notes like accelerated rocket program, advanced medicine data, human experiments record, covert communications, and mass psychological operations. Some of these discoveries will help build the modern world. Others will remain buried because no nation wants to admit how they were obtained. Across the ocean, in Soviet command posts, similar conversations unfold. Stalin's officers are also collecting documents, interrogating scientists, and preparing secret trains to move valuable personnel east. The war ended with signatures and photographs. But the battle for knowledge, knowledge capable of defining the next century, begins immediately. In Europe, bombed research facilities are stripped for equipment. In Japan, military doctors burn notebooks and destroy glass vials before American teams arrive. In Germany, scientists who once swore loyalty to Hitler now shake hands with American intelligence officers, choosing between prison or a new life in a new country with a new flag. No one in these rooms speaks about moral duty. They speak in cold calculations. If the United States does not secure this knowledge, the Soviets will. If the Soviets secure it first, they gain the future. The world assumes peace. Governments see a narrow window where information is a weapon more powerful than tanks. The next war will not be won by infantry, one commander quietly notes. It will be won in laboratories and intelligence rooms. Files close, locks click, and orders are issued that will never appear in newspapers or school textbooks. Outside, children buy ice cream while their parents wave flags. Inside, a colonel signs a directive authorizing the recruitment of individuals who weeks ago were considered enemies of humanity. The logic is simple, harsh, and classified. Punishment can wait. National survival cannot. This approach will shape new programs, secret operations, and classified missions unknown to the public for decades. Some involve bringing former enemy scientists to American soil. Others involve storing disturbing medical and biological data instead of destroying it. Some monitor foreign diplomats and collect intercepted communications. All share one principle: information is power, and power cannot be shared. In these early days of peace, history splits into two versions. The public sees rebuilding, diplomacy, and hope. Behind restricted doors, officials speak about containment, intelligence races, and preemptive strategies. They anticipate a world divided not by ideology alone, but by secrets. Who has them, who protects them, and who hides them? War exposed what nations are willing to do to survive. Now peace will show what they are willing to do to stay ahead. The moral simplicity of wartime fades. The ethical lines blur. The United States celebrates victory, but its intelligence community prepares for a long, invisible struggle. A file drawer closes, a safe locks. Outside, the crowd chants, "The war is over." Inside, an intelligence officer whispers what will become the defining truth of the next era. Wars end, power doesn't. The Second World War has officially concluded, but the most strategic decisions of the conflict are being made right now, not on battlefields, but in secret offices where information replaces ammunition. For the first time in history, humanity enters an age where the greatest weapon is not a bomb or a bullet, but a classified document. If you want the truth behind what really shaped the modern world, like this video and subscribe, because history isn't just what nations publish, it's what they hide. Do you believe victory should always bring full truth to the public, or are some secrets necessary for national security? Germany, May 1945. The Third Reich falls in ruins. Cities smolder, fields are empty, and surrender notices echo across Europe. But inside secret Allied intelligence centers, officers don't look for gold, art, or stolen treasure. They search for people. The kind of people who built V-2 rockets, engineered jet engines ahead of their time, designed nerve agents capable of paralyzing armies, and pushed science to corners the world was not prepared to understand. Nazi laboratories are discovered intact. Blueprints for weapons beyond conventional imagination lie on tables. Engineers stand with hands raised, waiting to see whether the victors will judge them or hire them. Public statements say war criminals will face justice, but behind guarded doors, American officials debate quietly. The Soviet Union now occupies Berlin's eastern sector, and their officers are already loading German scientists onto military trucks. A new race begins, not for land, but for intelligence. The United States and the USSR, victorious together only days earlier, now compete to recruit the same minds. In one meeting room, a US officer writes a directive that will never appear in wartime posters: secure personnel, erase affiliations if necessary. The operation receives a name simple enough to hide in plain sight: Paperclip, because new identity files will be attached to dossiers with a paperclip, replacing truth with usefulness. German engineers stand in interrogation rooms, answering questions not about ideology, but capability. How far could rockets reach? How fast could jets fly? What happened in test chambers hidden under mountains? In another room, American officers quietly remove Nazi Party membership notes from files. A signature disappears, an SS rank vanishes. A scientist who once saluted Hitler now signs paperwork for US Army ordnance. Some hesitate, but most understand the world changed overnight. Yesterday, they served a dictator. Today, they serve whoever controls their freedom and their knowledge. Among them, one name will become famous worldwide: Wernher von Braun. Slim, ambitious, brilliant, he led Germany's rocket program and dreamed of reaching the stars. But rockets need labor, and his V-2s were built by forced prisoners in underground factories where thousands died. After capture, he speaks to US officials carefully, admitting to military duty, minimizing everything else. American commanders weigh morality against strategy. Germany's rockets nearly reached orbit. The Soviets are already transporting engineers east. The decision becomes inevitable. Von Braun and his team will not face trial. They will work in America. Soon, unmarked intelligence planes carry scientists from Germany to US soil. They land not as prisoners, but as special military personnel. Their records remain sealed. Their expertise becomes property of their new nation. In Texas, Alabama, and New Mexico, they design rockets for the US Army. Some men who once worked in underground factories now walk freely inside American research facilities, surrounded by guards who salute. Outside those gates, families of Allied soldiers still bury loved ones killed by V-2 strikes in London and Antwerp. Inside, engineers refine missile guidance systems for future American forces. Paperclip does not stop with rockets. Chemical researchers who once experimented in German labs now contribute to US chemical defense programs. Aviation doctors who studied human endurance in extreme conditions, including unethical trials in camps, bring knowledge that later informs high-altitude flight and space medicine. Intelligence officers once tied to Nazi spy networks provide insights that help shape early CIA operations against the Soviets. Some Americans protest quietly, arguing that justice should matter. They lose the argument. The Cold War logic wins. If we don't take them, Moscow will. Across the ocean, the Soviets run their own extraction program. Scientists and their families disappear into secure towns near Moscow. Soviet officers celebrate acquiring blueprints for rockets capable of hitting continents. American analysts intercept reports and feel pressure rise. The world promised peace, but science from the war now fuels a quiet technological arms race. In Washington, a senator reads a sanitized briefing and approves new funding. He never sees the classified version. The public sees headlines about reconstruction. The classified world tracks former Nazi engineers adjusting slide rules in US laboratories. Some of the Paperclip recruits will eventually help win the space race. Von Braun becomes a key architect of NASA's Saturn V rocket. Photographs show him standing beside American presidents, smiling during press conferences. Few mention where he began his career. Documents about forced labor at Mittelwerk stay in locked archives. Television programs celebrate the moon landing, and history textbooks praise American innovation. Meanwhile, only classified files remember the price paid in human suffering to obtain certain knowledge. Not all Paperclip scientists remain hidden. Some struggle with guilt, others never acknowledge the past. A few return to Europe quietly after retirement. Most Americans never learn their names. Only decades later, when government papers slowly declassify and researchers investigate, does the scale become visible. Over 1,600 German scientists and engineers entered the United States under false or cleaned identities. Many contributed to major American technological advances. Some never should have been allowed to. But war forces choices. And in 1945, the choice was clear to leaders on both sides of the Atlantic. Survival comes first. The program stays secret until journalists uncover documents in the 1970s. Families of war victims express shock. Veterans question why men who built weapons for Hitler received homes and salaries in America. Government officials offer explanations. National security, Soviet threat, scientific necessity, it does not erase controversy. But history is rarely comfortable. It is strategic. Paperclip did not rewrite the past, it re-engineered the future. When people look at rockets rising into the sky today, they see progress, exploration, and human ambition. They rarely see the shadows beneath the launch platforms. Progress sometimes begins in places no one wishes to revisit. The United States won a technological race, but not without absorbing pieces of the world it claimed to defeat. If you believe real history must be told in full, good and uncomfortable, like this video and subscribe. Because truth does not change, because it's inconvenient. Do you think a nation should choose justice first or advancement first, even if it means working with those who once served a brutal regime? Manchuria, 1942. Snow moves like ash across the fields outside Harbin. The Japanese Empire calls this land a research zone. Soldiers patrol gates, doctors in white coats walk between concrete buildings, trucks deliver crates and fuel. To an outsider, it looks like a military hospital or a public health center. Official signs read Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. But inside these walls, Japan is not studying how to heal. It is studying how to kill. This place has a name the world will not fully learn for decades. Unit 731. War pushes nations to extremes. The Japanese High Command believes biological weapons could give them absolute power. Not bombs, not bullets. Bacteria, plague, cholera, anthrax, typhus. Invisible killers that cross borders silently. General Shiro Ishii, a military doctor with ambition and no moral limit, convinces leadership that disease can win wars. He gets unlimited authority, a secret facility, and thousands of human test subjects. Civilians call him doctor. Soldiers call him commander. History will call him something else. Inside the compound, prisoners arrive. Farmers, teachers, laborers, resistant suspects, entire families from nearby villages, Koreans, Chinese civilians, Soviet prisoners of war, a small number of captured Western soldiers. They are not told charges, trials, or sentences. They are given numbers, no names, no records. In internal documents, they are not patients. They are called maruta, logs. Something to use, not someone to acknowledge. The Japanese doctors say they serve science, but science here has no ethics, no humanity, only objectives. In underground rooms and surgical chambers, experiments begin, not simulations, real infection, real pain, real death. Plague bacteria injected directly into veins. Cholera placed in water and food, frostbite tests where limbs are submerged in ice water and exposed to freezing wind until the flesh turns to ice. Doctors tap frozen arms with wooden sticks to hear if they sound solid, then amputate without anesthesia to study the damage. Vivisections on fully conscious prisoners. Organs removed while hearts still beat. Some subjects are tied to stakes outdoors to watch disease spread in real time. Others are forced to inhale gas or placed in pressure chambers until lungs burst. Pregnant women are infected, children are included. There is no mercy, there is only data collection. Outside the walls, soldiers test biological weapons in the field. Fleas infected with plague are released over Chinese villages. Wells are poisoned. Reports record outbreaks that appear natural but were engineered. Villagers die quietly, far from international reporters. Entire regions suffer epidemics whose source no one understands. Wars are supposed to involve soldiers. Here, war targets civilians who do not even know they are part of a battlefield. Japan expects to use these weapons against Allied forces if the war reaches the home islands. Ishii builds special ceramic bombs designed to spread bacteria when dropped from planes. The goal is not just to win, it is to terrify, to collapse societies through fear and disease. Meanwhile, most Japanese citizens and soldiers know nothing. Even doctors in Tokyo hospitals have no idea what their colleagues in Manchuria are doing. As Japan's defeat becomes certain in 1945, Ishii receives orders to destroy evidence. Records burned, bodies cremated, remaining prisoners killed, buildings demolished, soldiers sworn to silence, trucks haul documents to furnaces day and night. By the time Allied forces enter, Unit 731 looks abandoned, as if nothing significant happened there. No sign of mass torture, no archives, no instruments left behind. A ghost facility built to erase itself. But secrets do not stay buried forever. Soviet forces interrogate some captured Japanese officers. Testimonies leak. Survivors in Chinese villages tell stories that do not match ordinary disease outbreaks. American investigators receive intelligence reports. Something happened here. something governments hesitate to expose. The reason is not disbelief. The reason is strategic. At the end of the war, the United States faces a choice: prosecute Unit 731 doctors in open court, reveal to the world the scale of the crimes, and risk losing exclusive access to biological data, or cover it up and acquire the information before the Soviets can. The Cold War has already begun. Washington chooses intelligence over transparency. Ishii and his key researchers negotiate immunity in exchange for handing over their research records and briefing U.S. officials. Moscow later holds its own trials, but in American files, Unit 731 becomes a classified subject. The victims are forgotten. The perpetrators live quietly. Some return to medicine. Some enter academia. Ishii receives a comfortable retirement. History moves on, officially. For decades, the general public knows little. Historians gather fragments. Survivors speak, but not everyone believes them. Governments avoid the topic. There are no Tokyo trial executions for these crimes, no world court hearings, only silence. It is not until the 1980s and 1990s, when documents declassify and scholars publish detailed studies, that Unit 731 becomes globally acknowledged. Museums open in Harbin, former soldiers confess, witnesses confirm, and the world confronts a truth more disturbing than fiction. In the name of science, humans were treated as expendable instruments, and the knowledge produced, knowledge born from torture, was considered valuable enough that a superpower chose secrecy over justice. Today, ethical standards in medicine emphasize consent, dignity, and humanity because history proves what happens when science operates without them. Not all advancements come from noble origins. Some come from places we hope never to see again. When nations justify anything in the name of victory or survival, the cost is carried by those with no power to resist. War crimes are usually judged by battles and borders. But some wars leave wounds not on landscapes, but on the integrity of human knowledge. Unit 731 reminds us that not all horrors explode on battlefields. Some happen quietly in laboratories, hidden by uniforms and justified by ambition. And when governments decide truth is inconvenient, history becomes a locked file, until someone forces it open. If you value bringing hidden history into the light, like this video and subscribe, because some lessons only survive when they are spoken aloud. Do you believe nations should always reveal wartime crimes, even if doing so exposes their own compromises? Or are some truths too dangerous to ever fully uncover? France, September 1944. The German army is retreating, but it is far from beaten. Allied divisions push east, exhausted, stretched thin, facing a desperate enemy capable of sudden counterstrikes. Every bridge, every crossroads, every river crossing matters. And in this critical moment, as the war turns into a contest of endurance, the United States deploys a unit unlike any other. Not because of what they carry, but because of what they pretend to be. A convoy rolls toward the front, but it is not carrying infantry. Inside are painters, engineers, sound technicians, radio operators, and set designers. Their mission is not to fight with bullets, but with illusion. Their existence is classified, their orders written with precision and silence. Their purpose, to make the enemy believe something that is not true. Their name will only become known decades later, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, better known as the Ghost Army. They number around 1,100 men, too small to be a real fighting force, yet tasked with simulating entire armored divisions. They do not operate in secret rooms far from danger. They deploy near active combat lines, sometimes only a few kilometers from German scouts, artillery observers, and Luftwaffe reconnaissance planes. If caught impersonating combat units, they could be executed as spies. But the risk is accepted because deception can save thousands of real soldiers. They unload equipment under camouflage nets, inflatable Sherman tanks, rubber artillery guns, dummy half-tracks, inflatable jeeps and trucks. Crews unfold canvas, pump air, and attach painted details. From a distance, and especially from the air, the illusion is convincing. A field appears full of armor, a hill looks fortified. A village road suddenly hosts a military build-up that never happened. Nearby, sound trucks set up large speakers. Engineers play recordings specially produced by the U.S. Army Signal Corps. Tracks of tanks moving, bulldozers digging, men shouting, chains clanking, radio chatter between officers. The sounds are layered, controlled, and projected several miles across the landscape. At night, listening from forests or distant ridges, German soldiers hear what sounds like entire divisions preparing for attack. Meanwhile, radio operators mimic the communication style of real U.S. units. They know call signs, message rhythms, slang. They imitate personalities of officers they've never met, so convincingly that German intelligence intercepts proof of troop presence. They study theater, tone, timing, behavior. They rehearse before transmitting like actors polishing a scene. Then there are the visual cues. Tents arranged neatly, fake command posts, laundry hung on lines, decoy military police directing imaginary convoys, soldiers walking routes repeatedly to imitate large unit traffic patterns. Sometimes they paint extra markings on trucks to impersonate famous divisions. Sometimes they drive a handful of vehicles in loops, creating dust clouds that mimic a brigade on the move. In war, deception is not chaos. It is choreography. And it works. In one operation, they simulate the U.S. 6th Armored Division. German patrols report armor buildup. Headquarters shifts resources to defend against a threat that does not exist. The real armored division quietly maneuvers elsewhere and attacks where defenses are weak. In another operation near the Rhine, they stage a noisy preparation for a river crossing. The real crossing happens miles away under far less resistance. Each deception buys lives, American lives, without firing a shot. These men are not actors pretending to be soldiers. They are soldiers pretending to be armies. Their backgrounds are unusual for wartime service. Many trained at art schools, advertising firms, architecture programs. Some studied sculpture and painting. Others worked in sound design or set construction. Several will later become celebrated artists, names like Ellsworth Kelly and Bill Blass. But in 1944, they are anonymous specialists whose job is to turn creativity into a tactical weapon. They sleep little, move constantly, and cannot speak openly about their mission, not even to nearby Allied troops who believe they are seeing armor brigades rotating through the front. Silence protects them. Ignorance protects the illusion. German scouts observe, report, and retreat. The ghost army packs up quietly, leaving behind footprints, fake tire tracks, and an enemy reacting to phantoms. Their role is not glamorous. There are no medals for fooling an enemy. Their stories do not appear in newspapers. They do not march down victory boulevards. They operate between lines, never too close to fighting, never far enough to be safe. They are armed, but their weapons remain holstered. Their battlefield is perception, their ammunition imagination, their shield secrecy. During the final months of the war, this unit performs more than 20 deception missions. Analysts later estimate they saved thousands of soldiers from direct combat or artillery fire. They misdirected German units, slowed counteroffensives, and protected flanks during critical advances. Yet when the war ends, they return to civilian life quietly. Orders classify their work. Records are sealed. Their families think they served in a simple engineering or signal unit. Their achievements remain buried by national security requirements. For nearly 50 years, the Ghost Army is an unspoken chapter of the war. Only in the 1990s, as documents slowly declassify and veterans age, does the story surface. Historians examine mission reports, photos of inflatable tanks appear, surviving members speak publicly. The truth finally reaches museums, documentaries, and eventually Congress. In 2022, the US government awards them the Congressional Gold Medal, decades late, but deserved. Their legacy reshapes modern warfare. Today, deception teams exist in psychological operations, cyber warfare, and electronic masking. Drones mimic jets on radar. Digital signals simulate battalions. Warfare evolves, but the principle remains. Sometimes the most effective weapon is the enemy's own assumptions. This is not a story about trickery for amusement. It is about strategy, discipline, and risk. It is proof that war is not only force, it is intelligence, creativity, and the ability to make an adversary act against his own interest. The Ghost Army shows that saving lives sometimes requires illusions as powerful as bullets. They never fired artillery, but they redirected enemy artillery away from real soldiers. They never stormed a beach, but they protected those who did. They will never be known for the ground they captured, but for the ground others never had to bleed for. In a world obsessed with visible heroes, they served as invisible ones. If deception saved thousands of lives, would you call it a weapon or a form of mercy? Arlington, Virginia, February 1943. Snow falls quietly on the Army Signal Intelligence Service building. Inside, there are no cheers, no medals, no attention. Just rows of desks, tired eyes, and code sheets pinned to wooden boards. While the world is still fighting on beaches and in skies, a different battle takes place here, quiet, invisible, unknown. A handful of cryptanalysts sit in silence, reviewing intercepted radio messages not from Nazi Germany, but from a supposed ally, the Soviet Union. The United States and the USSR stand side by side against Hitler. But the men in this room already know what no one else does. Friendly flags do not erase strategic ambition. A young cryptanalyst traces patterns across a column of numbers and pauses. The coding system looks sophisticated, but then he sees something small, a repeated encryption pad number, a mistake, a gap, a door just barely open. He leans closer. The room holds its breath. Slowly, a hidden truth emerges. These are not military logistics or diplomatic chatter. They are covert intelligence messages, Soviet spy transmissions sent from inside the United States. A war within a war, a threat hiding behind an ally's handshake. The project receives a single word name, Venona. This is not the romantic espionage of movies. No trenchcoat informants on bridges, no dramatic confessions. It is mathematics, patience, pencil lead rubbed into paper at midnight, and analysts betting their careers on hunches inside rooms with no windows. They expect to find low-level informants. Instead, they uncover something far bigger. Networks, code names, access points inside laboratories, government buildings, and diplomatic offices. A chilling realization forms. Soviet intelligence is not preparing for peacetime cooperation. It is preparing for the next conflict. The messages speak in fragments. Liberal, Antenna, Ailes, Charlie. Each a code name, each connected to a real person living in America or Britain. These individuals don't wear enemy uniforms. They file reports in government offices, work in labs, attend social gatherings, consult on policy decisions. They shake hands with generals and diplomats. They walk freely in hallways where future worlds are designed. Some believe fervently in communism. Some act for ideology, not money. Others do it for power. A few simply believe the Soviets are the future. Whatever their motives, the outcome is the same. Intelligence leaks from the West into Moscow. Among the discoveries is a quiet alarm. Scientists working on nuclear research have been approached or compromised. The Manhattan Project, the most secret scientific program in America, has cracks in its walls. Not theoretical, not imagined, real. Venona traffic identifies Soviet handlers communicating with American technicians and physicists. The coded messages reference materials, scientific terms, shipment schedules, reactor details. Information meant for one ally is quietly feeding another. The United States is fighting a war abroad while being infiltrated at home. Names will emerge slowly, piece by piece. Klaus Fuchs, a brilliant physicist working within the British delegation to the Manhattan Project, will eventually be uncovered as having passed nuclear research data to the Soviets. Julius Rosenberg, connected to espionage rings involving atomic secrets and military electronics. Allegations lead to trials, controversy, execution. And Alger Hiss, a high-ranking State Department official, respected, composed, powerful, later revealed through Venona cables to have shared classified materials and analysis. His case will divide American politics for generations. Some will deny his guilt forever. Venona's decrypts will eventually confirm it. Throughout the early Cold War, this program stays locked inside classified vaults. Presidents come and go, even some of them do not know the full story. Congressional hearings rage about communist infiltration, but the most precise evidence remains hidden, not because authorities doubt it, but because revealing it would expose the code-breaking success. In intelligence, the hardest decision isn't uncovering secrets, it's deciding whether revealing the truth harms national security more than silence. Analysts continue working the messages long after victory in Europe. The Cold War rises slowly, like a tide. Berlin blockades, nuclear tests in the Pacific, the Korean War. McCarthy rises and falls in political storms, and still, Venona stays quiet, decoding fragments, mapping networks, identifying spies. Some targets are prosecuted, some flee, some quietly retire, some are never charged because the evidence cannot be presented in court without compromising the operation. Intelligence victories rarely look like courtroom victories. They look like files sealed away, an enemy neutralized without anyone knowing how. By the time the Venona project ends in 1980, the Soviet Union has men on the moon, nuclear submarines at sea, and influence in half the planet. But Venona's work helped the United States understand the threat much earlier than the public did. It shaped counterintelligence strategy, guided covert operations, and influenced foreign policy decisions for decades. And still almost no one knew its name. Only in 1995, 52 years after that first decrypt, did the US government finally release Venona files. Historians and journalists were stunned. What seemed like speculation or paranoia in earlier decades turned out to have been grounded in classified fact. Espionage didn't start after WWII. It had been operating during it, beneath the same alliance banners that flew at victory parades. Nations united to defeat fascism, then immediately maneuvered to protect themselves from each other. Venona did not reveal betrayal by ordinary citizens. It revealed something deeper, that trust between nations disappears the moment survival is at stake. Ideology creates allies, but ambition creates rivals. And in the end, no treaty, no handshake, no shared victory changes the core nature of power. Information decides the future, and every nation wants tomorrow for itself. Today, the Venona files sit in archives and digital libraries. Students reading them feel distance, but for decades, they were the most sensitive secrets of the US government. Proof that in war and peace, some battles are silent, some enemies are unseen, and some victories must remain uncelebrated. The men and women who worked on Venona never fired a shot, yet they helped shape the balance of the nuclear age, not by force, but by understanding. History remembers battles and generals, but the truth is simple. While armies marched and flags changed hands, another war unfolded in codes and whispers, and that quiet war shaped the world just as much as the loud one. When nations fight side by side, then turn against each other the moment the threat ends, what does that say about alliances? Are they built on trust, or only on necessity?